From the southernmost point of Dorne to the lands of always winter and what is west of Westeros and the shadows in the east, this is Casterly Talk, a special Q&A follow-up edition to the trailer. The last episode we had here, Casterly Talk, episode 121, discussing the House of the Dragon trailer. Don't worry, the Game of Thrones rewatch still continues. I will have another episode in the can soon, and then I'll be heading off to Star Wars Celebration, which will delay a little bit of Game of Thrones rewatching, but we'll be taking your questions, calls, anything you got. As always, don't be shy. Reach on out via Twitter. Follow me at Ken Napzok. Use the hashtag CasterlyTalk to ask a question, or if you're following along on the app, the Anchor app, on the podcast side, go ahead and leave us a message there. If you're watching on the YouTube side, leave a message in a comment, and I'll grab it. I want to thank the people who have been so wonderful in the comments, especially even last week when I was doing some breakdowns and I kind of fumbled one of the big funerals that it could possibly be. It's been a little bit since I've read Fire and Blood, skipped over that. You guys are so great with follow-up information, just being so awesome about it and supportive. Love that. That's what we want to build here around the Casterly Talk parts as we race into House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. Today, I am not alone at all. Coming back to the show to help me answer some questions, and he's going to share his feelings on that House of the Dragon trailer. It's Alden Diaz. Alden, how you doing?
Riding in like the Knights of the Vale. I saw you down there being surrounded. I'm here, surrounded by hype. What
thank
a moment.
Thank you.
I'm always here, but much like Baelish, you'll owe me a favor later. I'm going to weasel my way into your house.
Oh, that sounds ominous, and I love it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's some of the stuff that just getting right into like this trailer, man. I've watched it like 10 times. Just the energy's right. It just feels good.
I want to bounce off you here with some discussion points and some further deep dive in the time we have here today and what you thought about this trailer. Let me just start from here as I stumble to get to the first question. What's your excitement level at now that we're starting to see it take form?
I think that I was always at a nice simmering excitement just on premise alone, because I love this world so much, because I've missed it so much, because of that man, one of my favorite actors, Matt Smith, being in there. So I was already excited. I was never, I don't feel a certain trepidation because I'm a season 8 enjoyer. I went out and I finished that show, and I've watched it beginning to end like 2 more times since it wrapped. And I've been excited every time. So now to get new material, I've always been excited. And this trailer just made me feel like it's more real than it's ever been, which I guess, trailers by design are to sell the general audience. Trailers for fandom people and nerds and pundits and fans is to assure you like it's happening, calm down, like check it out, here's a taste. And it was exactly right. And a lot of the times I will see these things either like after a nap or like they always are timed so I'm groggy for some reason. So I got up and I saw a text that said trailer with like a bunch of R's from my buddy, and I clicked it, and it just feels like it got my excitement level up to that. Sort of like I felt before a new season of GOT. I feel like we're just back. It just so happens that it's the past.
Yeah, we're back, baby. We're back. No, wonderful. Yeah, the first time I saw the trailer, didn't have glasses or contacts on, and was let's just say in the middle of waking up and doing something else when I saw something on my phone. What is this? What's going on? Am I dreaming this? One of the things I was talking about last week to the camera and to my own microphone, but I want to bring it up to you and see what you think here. In the trailer, we've got we got King Viserys the first, kind of telling the realm, hey, my daughter Rhaenyra, that's who I think will be my heir. Let's go with this, right? And we get some bended knee action there. And in there, we've got Starks and Baratheons. And I love that moment, but I keep going back to that. It's going, this trailer is having to thread that needle Assurance is a great way to look at it. Assuring fans who are here for it, pulling maybe fans back in, which is maybe we don't want to admit it. Even folks like you and I who do love season 8 and do celebrate Game of Thrones, do love the Song of Ice and Fire. We love it, every shadow of it. And it had to do that. And I just thought it was one particular moment where I'm like, this really kind of tells me it looks the same, feels the same. They got a lot of characters they got to get out to the public and sell the public on. But I love them throwing those names back in. What do you think about that moment? What do you think about that idea?
It's one of my favorite aspects of the trailer is just hearing those names, because obviously they haven't left our minds or our hearts of Stark Baratheon, but we're in the age of the prequel, spinoff, and legacy sequel. And while a lot of things, the obvious being Star Wars for you and I, but even things like the Ghostbusters sequel that came out, Afterlife, like they're able to show, a picture of Harold Ramis in a frame, like, oh, is this the continuation of this? Like, there's a language of touching on the public consciousness, and the Thrones doesn't have as many opportunities for that because of how expansive the cast was, because of the medieval setting. You can't show a photo of a familiar character or maybe pan over a location at this point. But doing that is, all right, if we're going to bank on a couple of words that will get anyone that has seen any season, those are fair choices. Stark and Baratheon are going to be the kinds of things. You could have said, Brothers of the Night's Watch. You could have said, obviously Targaryen is your big one. You could have said Lannister. There's a couple of those things that are just like, oh, that's a Game of Thrones word, right? Like if you say Frodo out loud, people will at least sort of have the idea you're talking about that ring stuff.
That ring stuff. Maybe throw in a Baggins. That'll work. That'll work. Yeah, well said. And it's just, it's something I'm fascinated by, because it's a reality I think I have to face as someone who's like, I recently defended season 8 at my own birthday party with probably more vim and vigor than I should have at a party. I love that season. I love the show, warts and all, as we always say around here. Doesn't mean everything's perfect, but right. I think in the last, even since I talked about the trailer here last week, I've had to face that, like, yeah, they really do have to make sure they're communicating to what I call those casual, but yet really loyal fans, that it's okay to come back, even though those names aren't going to be featured, and maybe they'll learn that. And then there's a lot of new characters to learn, which can be confusing, which is my follow-up to this in the continuation of this conversation, Alden. I even had a reaction in my own house with my fiance, who loves Game of Thrones, loves Daenerys, was kind of like, I don't know. It looks great. It looks good. I don't know who any of these people are. I'm not invested. And a minute and 30-second trailer is not going to take care of that across the board. She knows that. I know that. Everyone knows that. Do you think now the onus is on the House of the Dragon to take everyone into the show by saying, here's who the players are, because they can get confusing?
I think that it's going to have not work to do, like they're not up to it, or like that anyone is owed anything, but I think that there is going to be similar maybe execution strategies, I guess would be the right phrase, as Game of Thrones season 1. Game of Thrones, the pilot tags the locations in a way that later stuff did not in the show. You're able to bounce around the storylines. Like now, going back to Game of Thrones season 1, every time I've seen it since, I'm able to pick up like how sort of gentle it was with your brain about introducing names. Like I remember trying it for the first time in high school. I tried the Game of Thrones pilot once in high school and thought, same for me. This is this is not engaging to me. And then it was later on that I was like, oh, this is such a rich world. But I think that they will have. My big one was always Varys Viserys in Game of Thrones season 1. I was always like, which one's the bald one and which one is the brother? Like I was always doing that. Now I think that they will have similar challenges, maybe with some of the naming and stuff. So I predict this to be, and not to spoil any answers for a later audience question that we have, but I do think that they will not be diving into any of the massive events or big complexities until midpoint of the season later on.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Ease everyone in, and this is I always want to make sure, and I don't think we are here in this conversation, but that passionate fans or those that are even creating and performing the shows, that there's no sense of gatekeeping, the sense of you don't know the names. that's on you. They have to be concerned about that, have to be worried about it. And you're so right. Early, especially the pilot, but early season 1 of Game of Thrones, it faced that problem. How many conversations did you have with friends where they're like, I don't know who all the characters are. I'm confused. And that's
Oh,
not
yeah.
that the show failed to deliver. That's the way it is. You're gonna, not everyone is like you and I who are taking pens and writing down notes. So that dragon eats hay. This one pigs. Any dragons eat hay? I don't think so. We're the outliers here, and so the trailers I think have done the trailers have been great. I think they need to maybe improve going forward, even though they've got tweets out there of this is when and this is who. I do think that's going to be important.
Yeah, and I sometimes will, because we're so steeped in this nerd culture, sometimes we will see a trailer. Like, I think that a show you'll be covering here, Rings of Power, does that in a little bit more of a on the nose way. Not that it's bad, but that trailer has before the ring, before the fellowship, and maybe you need that. For us, we're kind of like, before the ring. We can almost predict what each one's going to be. But it is still a phenomenon that eclipsed nerddom. It transcended into the regular world. I mean, we have those friends and family members. My mother watched all 8 seasons, loved it top to bottom, got to the end, could probably name 2 characters. She just knew their faces and what they were doing. But at the end, I was like, do you even know anyone's name? She goes, there's John, and there's the little man. And she just had identifications for all of them.
Dolores, Dragon Lady. She's
She's like, but I had a great time. But yeah, so.
And that's something I was talking about last week. And I think you're right. Again, each episode of Game of Thrones that set a viewing record, 6.1 million, 7.1 million. We're in the rewatch. We're in the middle of season 4, where it just keeps setting records for viewing numbers. Yeah, that you're right. That is not the quote hardcore fans. That is not all the people who know every name and every plot line. And you need those too. You need us. You need us on these shows, going, hey, here's what this means, and here's the fun of this, and here's that. That's why there's this industry, quite frankly.
Right.
There was need for that. Even going back today, Maria Menounos and the AfterBuzz crew that I used to do work with over there, that was a stroke of genius to be like, we need a place to go talk about this afterwards. But going in, I think they're doing a good job. I think once 1 or 2 episodes are all out there, people will get their footing. It'll be okay. But that's something I have heard a few times, despite the excitement for the trailer. When is this again? Who is that now?
Yeah, and I think it's important for those hardcore fans to know, of which we are both. It is half an adaptation of part of Fire and Blood, but it's also half a prequel to HBO's Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So I think that there needs to be, while the more casual viewer should maybe get a little bit more from HBO, but also at the same time expect a little bit of that learning curve. They have to remember where they were at the beginning of Game of Thrones, and maybe by the end they learned it, and it'll be a new chapter in the workbook, so to speak. However, going over to the hardcores, I think that we see these moments a lot, like in our Star Wars fandom, like, oh, it would have been nice if Boba Fett and Chrysanthemum had acknowledged that one time that they had met, and it's like, yeah, but at the same, like, they gave what is needed at a base level. What is needed for every audience member, first time or not. So I do think that there also needs to be a surrendering of certain details that some people are going into this thinking, oh, are they gonna establish how Viserys when he was young did such and such and such, and it's like, no, it's gonna be what's core to this point in his life.
Yeah, and what's
in the same way that we didn't have flashbacks to Robert's Rebellion outside of just the Tower of Joy, because that's all you needed.
Right. No, excellent points there. I really, surrendering of the details. That's a great way to look at it. The details that are fun and the details that are there to be discovered. You mentioned the Boba Fett and Black Chrysanthemum over in the Book of the Boba Fett. Yeah, they have a bit of a history, not really acknowledged on the show other than subtext, and that's fine. And I think it's part of the fun. And it reminds me, and before we wrap up this discussion here, I'm going to get to you with some of your favorite moments or thoughts specifically from the trailer. But I will say this to those listening and watching on Casterly Talk, I'm always going to strike that middle ground between I am a hardcore fan who doesn't remember all the details all the time, despite reading all the maps and studying the books. Some of it escapes me. I study Star Wars 10 hours a day or 10 hours a week for Force Center. But also, but I also I have information. I have thoughts and have thematic thoughts on the thematic stuff going on. But we're gonna strike that balance, and we'll help you along, and others will help me along, and that's the vibe we want here. We're part of a larger Game of Thrones, House of Dragon, Song of Ice and Fire ecosystem here. So Alden, in closing this section of the show up,
slurping details.
Slurp up those details. What do you love about this trailer, theme wise, character wise, visions that you saw?
I adore everything with Daemon and Rhaenyra. I find them to be so fascinating. I think they will be fan favorites. I think that Matt Smith being the nerd celebrity going into the show, I think a lot of eyes are going to be on him, and I think they're smartly leaning into it. He's at the top of every little Twitter thread they do. He's in the, he just has that weight. I think he'll be your, not that he has an easy analog, but he'll be the one that catches fire quick and gets some, he'll get the 1/6 scale figure and the replica swords and things like that. And there's like some of this iconography right here, like in this shot, it's just a great way to communicate to people that it is a different time, because you see this guy just holding this dragon egg, which we know was so rare by the time of Daenerys' storyline. And it's just a very, it does a lot with a little things like that, showing more swords on the throne. It just is a nice way to communicate. Now, so everything with him really worked well for me because I'm already engaged with him so much. I think that for me, there are two beats that are almost like, in terms of the execution of the trailer, maybe not even in terms of scenes or moments or character, but whoever says history does not remember blood, it remembers names. I'm not sure whose voice that is, or as it comes up, but it amazed me that they really got their sort of stamp quote in now, and that it felt so right. Like that really was the you win or you die of this. Not that they mean the same thing, but that is that's the poster thing, that's the billboard thing, and it's one that just sent me just spiraling with connections and with ideas and passion and themes, and thinking about how this family goes all the way down in terms of our viewing experience. I'm sure George has notes that we'll discover 20 years from now about way after the fact. I have no doubt. But in terms of viewers coming in, we know X about the Targaryen family. And inside of X is that the last member that we see on our screens is Jon Snow. Aegon, I think 6 when his name is revealed. And history doesn't really remember blood. It does it. His blood does not come in. It's the quality of the man. It's the exploits of the man, of the hero, the mistakes, everything. And I think that history saying it doesn't remember blood is sort of like we're a dynasty right now, but everybody watching knows the writings on the wall for us, and that we end up being two siblings walking through fields with the Dothraki a few hundred years from now. So it's telling you this is a tragedy. This is the fall of the House Targaryen just being set up. The domino effect. So it's got all of that over there, and I'm sure it'll continue to be expanded upon. And then the other thing was the brief hints of the Ramin Djawadi Game of Thrones theme as the trailer went out. Which is not to say that I predict that the theme will be a riff on the original theme. I wouldn't mind that, but I'm excited to see what he comes up with for this opening credits, because it's one of the most iconic opening credits of all time. And it's the thing that everybody knows about the show, even if they don't know the show. It was Weird Al has used it. I remember he did the right George, right, like it's just like it's in the zeitgeist. And hearing the dun 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 right before it ended felt like just coming home. But home is a really dangerous and nasty place, and people are going to get hurt. So it's weird to feel warm fuzzies about something where I know everything goes wrong. But it's great.
I love
It's a great trailer.
Love this big theme idea you're putting out there. Of the history will not remember does not remember blood. That is spectacular. I really enjoy looking at it that way. Of the fall of the Targaryens. It's not necessarily correct to say it begins now, but this is the biggest rip in the banner, so to speak. This is the one that really does affect things. They still got a lot of time between here and then. But I love framing it that way because we're going to spend a few years around this family fighting each other and why that's important and why maybe it shouldn't happen, or why maybe they should avoid it, why they should work through it, or all those big whys of the
Targaryen. In terms of their context, they had, the assembly of the Iron Throne, the 1,000 blades of the enemies and everything. And this, as thinking of Bobby B, rest in peace, of the fist, like it's one thing, and that's what they were. And then this Dance of the Dragons is now looming, and it's the first sort of chink in the armor. And then by the reign of the Mad King, 300-ish years later, they are still, they're one again, but they were proven fallible here, and they were proven to be killable here, and everything sort of came undone. And so it's just an interesting sort of this show. The Game of Thrones had that air of the Targaryen dynasty lingering over it the entire time, of the thing you didn't get to see. And so now to be able to get to see it, but the trailer says ultimately the family is not as relevant as the individual, is really interesting.
Love it. Big swing there. Loved you saying, the music was fun just to get that hint. Again, a sign of, hey, remember that thing? This is still that thing. It might not be the thing, but remember the thing? We want you to love the thing. Come over here. So fascinating. Great stuff, Alden, on that trailer. More discussions like that with you and others here on Casterly Talk. We're going to get to some fan questions here. And hey, again, if you want to reach out, there's a lot of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Ken Napzok and leave a question there with the hashtag Casterly Talk. We do have a Facebook page as well, like it's 2009. And then also you can call in. And again, here on if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below for a future episode. I'll pull that in too. Also, if you support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Ken Napzok, there's a Casterly Talk Game of Thrones discussion. I always now just I try not to just use the term Game of Thrones for a general sense, but GOT still kind of works, right, Alden? It's still kind of the word for it.
I think so. Like it's almost like I don't know if I'd have to look at all the posters and banners. I don't know if they've done the From the World of or House of the Dragon : Game of Thrones, but there's going to be a little bit of that have the cake and eat it too, where that Star Wars does, where sometimes it's the Mandalorian, but on certain toys and on certain Emmy submissions and on certain things, it's Star Wars : So it almost makes you wonder, how much do they want to? Because they made, it gets lost on us now. They made that bold choice to choose just one of the book titles to encompass the entire thing way back when Dan and Dave started making the show. They could have chosen any of the other ones. They could have titled the seasons different things, and they never did. So it's almost like we put a lot of stock into that name. Let's hold on to it the best we can.
No, absolutely. It's the Kleenex of the brands here, right? And Game of Thrones. I can't think of any other name. Storm of Swords would have been cool. That kind of Clash of Kings would have carried you for a little bit, but Game of Thrones.
Feast for Crows is not marketable.
Feast for Crows.
My mom doesn't know what that means.
Yeah,
absolutely. She knows what a sword is. That would have worked. And Game of Thrones, I think, is it gives the air of machinations that everybody wanted. Yeah.
Well, look,
you were pitching it,
Yeah, every time I cash out on the old Game of Thrones slot machines, which are harder to find in Vegas, it's always Cersei Lannister saying, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. It just wouldn't have worked. When you have a dinner, it's a feast for crows or something like that. It just wouldn't have worked. Just wouldn't.
Nope.
Just wouldn't. And yes, I've lost a lot of money on the Game of Thrones slots. All right, Alden, let's get to some questions here. These questions actually come from Donald Long, one of our most loyal listeners. We love Donald. He's been listening since the early days of Daily Thrones when it was just an anchor show here. He asks this question first here, Alden. How far do you think into the Dance of the Dragons will season 1 include? This isn't a bad thing at all, but will season 1 be a setup like GOT was? Getting everybody knowledgeable of the characters, plot, time period, etc. Like we were talking earlier. It'll probably mirror GOT season 1 a little bit, King Robert death and Ned's, by ending with King Viserys' death, where in Fire and Blood the dance really begins, and since everyone fighting for that damn throne. It's always weird. I guess we should have put and would continue to try to put some spoiler warnings when discussing some of these characters for that general audience. I even take that for granted sometimes, but yes, there's probably some big deaths coming that really spin things out of control. What do you think here of Donald's question?
I think that's probably a spot on sort of rundown, at least of the season, sort of being the getting to know this man, everything, and not that he's the analog for Eddard Stark, but having, they're playing in the language of what the show established, and I think that it would sort of do well to connect with audiences in the sense that people started to pick up, oh, it's episode 9 of the season, it's episode 9 of the season, like that type of stuff. You can sort of carry that energy forward and create a level of care and really flesh out this character to then understand his children, to understand his family members. I think it would be a really wise move. And I also think that just on a business production side, it's smart to make this sort of the machinations and groundwork season before the dance really kicks off, because we want to see how this thing is received, how it runs, how it works before we get into what will surely be bigger, more expensive, larger type fare. And also it's a return to form for a lot of people that maybe felt that the mafia-esque politicking was gone. That's not to say that I feel that way, but it was a common sort of thing in the cultural landscape. So I think it's a smart move. I agree that that's probably going to be the play, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm certainly not a showrunner here. Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapochnik definitely. I'm sure I trust their ideas on this and where they're going. But yeah, that formula and all that to say, I don't think they're repeating a formula there. But it makes a lot of sense to build up and to do what you talk about what Game of Thrones did. Yeah, there were a little less of the political whispers in the corner, and watching that side of it, we got to the big battles. We were getting to big resolutions, and that's where you needed to go for a lot of that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I think some of that stuff was there more than people maybe want to remember, but you got a chance to kind of go back to that. You got a chance to go slow down a bit and really set it up. And because we know we're starting, or we're not starting, that's not right of me to say. We are playing around in two eras of this story,
right?
With the castings and stuff we've already seen. We got the younger versions and older versions of some key characters at play here. I think they're gonna have a lot of fun with that. I'm excited. And to Donald's overall question, a lot of good stuff in there about the characters and plots and communicating that, like we're talking about. But this was one of the first times, and I'm not embarrassed to admit it, but just kind of confessing, I've been so excited for this show. And I've read Fire and Blood, a few times in parts. Overall, read it once, loved it, and I've gone back to individual parts, and I'm going to do that again with this big section here. Wish I had done it before the trailer. Remembered some smaller details. I'm so excited, Alden, for this show, this season, that I kind of in my head was like, it's all going to happen here. And I'm like, well, time out. We do have to pace ourselves. So, I think we could be spending a lot of time in the quote unquote past with Viserys, the first and the younger versions of Alicent, Hightower, and Rhaenyra.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it just behooves them to really establish that, to really make it sing. And it's different than Game of Thrones season 1 sort of being book 1, because it's part of a history. So they can flesh out and play with things in ways that maybe they didn't even in Game of Thrones. And take this guy that or any character, if they feel, hey, there's something here that we could expand. And, you've talked about one of your favorite scenes in the show, if not your favorite scene in the show, is definitely a Napzok contender for number 1, is the scene of Robert and Cersei in Game of Thrones season 1. And how that's an original creation for the show. They have the opportunity to do tons of that with this as a history and to flesh it out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they really play with expectations. And also, it's not really an elephant in the room at this point, because Dan and Dave did so much of it. as they got further and further away from which is not a criticism, but from the novels, is that they were combining characters, they were changing locations of certain people, they were accelerating some storylines, they were taking things that then became pretty original because they were ahead. So what happens here? Are they going to shock us? Are they going to change things? Are they going to be omissions? Are they going to be additions? And it's we could watch the pilot of this and then realize, like we still don't even know how they're going to handle the time narratives. Is it going to be sort of a Book of Boba Fett thing where when it's relevant to the story, they'll flash back? Will the character themselves in the story be journaling or whatever device to get us there? Will it be we bookend every episode? However they decide to do it, that's going to slow down your present day story too. Not in a bad way, but it's going to make it more decompressed. So if we removed all those flashbacks, we could probably tell this 10 episode story in 7 or 8. But now we're pushing it out. So it's going to be they have just a really unique opportunity here, because Game of Thrones didn't do that outside of the young Cersei stuff. And then the Tower of Joy stuff it was a vision of the past in the present. So that was different. It wasn't a flashback necessarily. So
I'm so curious and intrigued by what they're going to do, what it actually is going to feel like and look like. And, I don't know how long Viserys is going to go in the show. I don't think it's an episode 1 and done. I think this could carry out 10 episodes, the story in the past. And who knows? Why even think it could end at season 1? Because if you're in what, again, we'll refer to as the present day of the story, you'll know some of the things that have happened, some of the big events that have really launched this civil war. So it's there, it exists. So we don't necessarily have to see it. We can hear it in the present and then see it in the past later on. Maybe that happens the final season. Maybe that's one of the final things is this big key death that launches the civil war we've just spent 6, 7, 8 seasons watching. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but you know what I mean? Like it's wide open, and one of the reasons is wide open, they have so much more room to play. This big giant section from Fire and Blood is still just one section in a larger history book where we know that you're right, they had to, from the start, Dan and Dave and their team had to figure out, all right, we got a roadmap, but eventually things are going to change and there's room. Let's go explore that. Let's cut this. And that just seemed like it was going off the path more than, it actually was. I think it took 2 steps off the path from the beginning. Just, you didn't recognize it as much. Right. This one, they have to be off the path for a lot of it, though George is clearly more involved at this point and is probably like building other paths for them. Maybe, I don't know. That's an assumption. But to hear you talk, I'm actually really intrigued by, there's so much blank pages, so many blank pages to play with. That excites me.
Yeah. And again, the formatting is, we're both so curious about it. I cannot wait to see it. I mean, if we could watch this pilot and 90% of it is in the past, and then it jumps forward and it's like, now these women, boom, we're never going back to the past again. We only cast them for this hour. Like, so it's exciting to have a world that after so many years I felt so intimately familiar with, and I felt like I knew what was happening. But we're back in that sort of feeling of, they can play around with it. They are different showrunners. They are going to have a different roster of directors, and they have different tools. But it's got that element of familiarity. So it's just it's exciting in the same way that whenever we return to like Tatooine, it's a different lens. So I don't care that it's still Tatooine. Like this is going to be the Red Keep, but it's the Red Keep with different voices, different eyes, different angles, and really excited about that.
You learn more about the land, the folks in the land. But when you keep returning to these key spots, and you just got to be thinking here too. I joked about it a little bit last week. I had my Night's Watch hat on last week. I love my Night's Watch. You all know that. Do you feel this show doesn't need to not just go up to the wall, but deal with anything that's out there, because nothing is necessarily happening at this point on the timeline? It is just the men of the Night's Watch protecting the realm valiantly from the free folk. Whereas like Blood Moon, we felt, for what we were hearing, was going to deal more with the Long Night or things like that. You'll hear about it. It'll be part of lore. It'll be part of fairy tales within the story.
Yeah.
But will you miss that at all if it's not there?
I will. I will miss it because it was the cocktail, right, that got you into it. We all had our favorites. Like the first time I watched the show, the Essos storyline was my least favorite. Now every time I rewatch it, I like it more and more and more because I've now seen the why and how and everything. I think that Game of Thrones was able to combine visually sort of different tones, the snows and the whites and blacks and everything, and that sort of dreary feeling, and then the opulence of like your King's Landing. That all made the world feel fleshed out. The personalities were all different. The performances were different. People playing Northmen versus people playing the Southerners, like different accents, different feels.
The wigs different,
the wig, everything. The dress. I mean, everyone had their favorite armors and outfits, and who didn't want to have the black cloak of a Night's Watch brother? Like, it's so cool.
I still want one. Yeah,
I want one too. We should get them for when we were reviewing these episodes.
Yeah,
I'll wear it in the Florida heat down here. It'll be great. I'll have a heat stroke on air.
I'll wear it in a Burbank summer.
At Del Taco.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I'll miss some of that. That said, I am fully expecting, and I don't know anything, but because I just know that these are fans, and I know that this is, George, and it's whenever a writer gets to take a crack at their stuff again, or in that different medium, it sort of enables an opportunity to, why not show that as a wink nod to the first. So maybe there's a key Targaryen character, right? And they are going to have a conversation that's from Fire and Blood, but maybe they're coming down from a visit to the Wall that they did for whatever reason. So we cut to the Wall for a little bit. It's that kind of stuff that, like I said at the top of the episode, they're also making a prequel to HBO's Game of Thrones. They're going to want to show a lord in Winterfell getting angry that he's been summoned by Viserys to show you Winterfell, and to have that moment of like, and you might hear the Stark theme for that moment, and then we're back. Like, I expect things like that in the same way that, and those things will be called fan service, and I will be on this show defending them. Because I think that the world should be allowed to breathe. I loved seeing the Forest Moon of Endor at the end of Rise of Skywalker. I loved seeing Cloud City. I love the special edition Return of the Jedi. I like the fact that in Moon Knight they mention Madripoor, which is just a city. They don't need to. It doesn't have to. It's just flourishes, little flavors, and I expect a lot of that here.
It's again, it's how you use it, and you and I love the why of a lot of these things. It's the themes behind it. So it could just be a checklist of, you're right, kings and queens with Targaryen names taking vacations and swinging up to the Wall. I'm using that word jokingly, of course, but having those processions go up there are happen a lot. So you could play around with that with Indeed, and it could just be a little bit of checklist. Having this big conversation on top of the Wall. Yeah, we've seen the Wall, but if you give me a good why behind it, it definitely moves beyond any kind of fan service. I think that word is used far too much.
Oh, absolutely. It's right. Entirely abused, especially in this world where, for characters like Viserys and Daemon, and Rhaenyra, these royals are making decisions that trickle down to the Wall, that trickle down to obviously Dragonstone. Will be, what members of the family are there versus at King's Landing right now. How are those? What's the interplay going to be between those locations? Are those locations going to come to symbolize that schism? And so it's like you said, it's all about why. Why are we there? And even small things like, and Game of Thrones was so good at that in so many ways throughout its run. Why did Tyrion go to the Wall in season 1? Because he says like, I want to piss off the side, but it's also because that's character work. He is the worldly one that was, like he said, sharpening the whetstone of his mind by going up to this, wanting to get a feel more for the realm that his family was bankrolling and was stomping all over in a lot of ways, and how he has that soft spot for Jon. And so you could easily enhance any of these characters just by giving them the right beat at the right place.
The right beat, the right place. Great way to look at that here. Next question coming in here from Donald as well. With a reported budget of 25 million, which is about 5 million more per episode than season 8 of GOT, what should our expectations really be like for the Dragons? For me, says Donald, I believe will be a couple main ones. We see close-up flying, laying around Dragonstone, one big action sequence, stuff like that. Not the big giant dragon on dragon violence, which I believe will start in season 2, hopefully. So again, Donald keeping with this theme of drawing it out. Now we said last week, I think George is on record saying 17 dragons going to be seen.
Wow.
But to Donald's point, George doesn't say they're all going to be in the foreground. Some might be flying in the background. We don't know. Big budget in an era where some streaming services are actually starting to say, oops, not enough money for all these shows. We got to cut some. HBO is all in on this one. Amazon is all in on Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Marvel. Disney's all in on those shows. The budget seems pretty solid. It is pretty big. Account for inflation and all that stuff, of course. What do you think? How are the Dragons going to feel, look, and how many do you want blowing fire into your face, Alden?
And that's the thing, right? Like you joke, like we're not getting into inflation, and like I wouldn't even know where to start with a topic like that. But the thing that did come to my mind is like I would love to talk to some VFX professionals and say, in the jump between, I mean, when was season 8 produced? Probably 2018. It was produced for the 2019 air date. So it's like in the jump between 2018 and now, has the ability to create a creature like that gotten more or less expensive? Have the techniques made that dollar go further? I don't know. And it's also hasn't been that much time. We saw what facial technology could jump like in 1 calendar year. So it's definitely possible that they have found the way to, we should have done this on GOT, or we were sort of there with Drogon, but we hadn't really gotten there now. So now we can sort of make that dollar go further. I think that overall, though, you're gonna want to still keep them, use them sparingly. I don't expect this to be the Dragon Fest that maybe the title would suggest to the casual audience, but I'd say maybe a little bit more than at the heyday of Dany's Children, when she had all 3 and she was, ruling over Slaver's Bay, and we would see them pop in and out. I would say, at it is that 17, about 10 of them are going to be circling the Red Keep for a shot. And we might see, maybe 1 per core lead Targaryen. I don't know. But I don't predict combat. That's true. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, at least constantly, at least till later. Yeah, no, I really like what you're saying there of just this idea of the technology is already better. We've seen. I mean, I thought GOT in the early, I thought the young dragons, the baby dragons, also just being cute, number one. I thought they looked really good. And then I thought that's some missteps. These are professionals putting their heart and soul into the VFX. But Dany riding off at the end of season 5 took some slings on social media, a little never ending story vibe. I remember that. I still think it looks good. I still think it got to some great spots. But I think I'm saying all that to say it's going to be better. And I think it's going to look great. But I still want it being the Dragons to not be used sparingly, but again, effectively. I need to see every dragon rider riding their dragon at the same time. I wouldn't mind hanging out in the dragon pit just for a little bit. Bigger stuff.
That'd be a great location to revisit.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff. So I think, Donald, I think they still got to use that money wisely. They're still doing these big, giant location shoots. And it's interesting, a lot of like looking at Lucasfilm and the Marvel stuff too, but just the spirit of George is to advance technology. And one of the major reasons is to make filmmaking cheaper, therefore more accessible to more people. That's one of George's big ideas and mandate. And season 1 of Mandalorian, the volume is this, which is already improved. It was this big thing. They still did not have the budget they wanted for season 1 of Mandalorian. They still had to make that magic happen. So it's still a concern. 25 million is a lot, but they're still probably sometimes they ran into things and said, hey, this dragon's got to be off screen because we got to focus somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I think of the conversations about Book of Boba Fett, Luke Skywalker. The whole object of their mission there was to push that face until it breaks. They were like, we need to find where it breaks. We need to find the end point of our limitations right now. And I think that Game of Thrones season 8 with, as the Funko Pops called him, Icy Viserion. I think Icy Viserion versus Drogon in that fight, that there was a certain level of, it's the night sky, it's cloudy, like let's be clever about it. It's not going to be dragon on dragon. I'm going to bite your neck. I'm going to do this. It was a dog fight. It was a dragon dog fight in the sky. And I think that maybe this time it's like, we're going to show dragons biting necks in daylight. Like it might be that next thing where maybe it's the same amount of dragon action that you got, but the dragon action that you're going to get is going to be way more intimate, in the same way that you talked about the volume. The volume is probably being used the same amount across the Disney Plus shows, but the depth of Mos Espa is, the client, Werner Herzog's client office doesn't hold a candle to Mos Espa. Same technology, but we can get in there more now in different ways. So.
Yeah, love it. Great question, Donald. Always love tracking the budgets of these shows, and they're big, giant numbers, but they still have to work within some parameters there. Final question here, again from Donald. Thank you all. Donald he sent me these a couple weeks ago, so I collected them. But if you have a question out there, get on in here and ask him as well. If somebody asks you, someone who has never seen GOT, if they come and ask you if they should watch Game of Thrones before or after House of the Dragon, what would you recommend? Personally, says Donald, I say before, just so they're familiar with some stuff in that world. And if they like reading, they should definitely read Fire and Blood. Same question could be asked for Rings of Power. So that's interesting. Maybe we'll add that discussion here as well. So yeah, this is, and it ties to a lot of what you and I deal with weekly on our Star Wars shows, Octo Radio and Force Center for me and Joseph and Jennifer. What and how do you watch it? I always say for Star Wars release order, but that's only because that's how I experience them. And I think they work. Entry points are very different and very important. So if someone really has been like, hey, I never watched Game of Thrones, but I kind of like these dragons, should I watch this one? I think at that point, watch House of the Dragon first, so you can be free to take it in as it is.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of, it's to cop out to say case by case, but I do think it is, because with Star Wars,
it's case by case. Yeah,
release and chronological are dealing with the same family, and even though this is too, it's that 300 years of removal that I think makes you safe. I think that some prequels are prequels, but they're designed to be watched after the fact. The perfect example is Better Call Saul. Better Call Saul, which I would say is even better than Breaking Bad, which is a high bar. It's an incredible show, but it does from the get say, yes, we're going back to the past, but we're going to show these black and white bookends that are after Breaking Bad. So pause and come back after you binge that. There's a level of that. Not saying they're going to do that here. Again, I'm not saying that this show will start with Drogon carrying Emilia Clarke, and then Drogon will be like, I wonder why this family's so messed up. And then it jumps back. I don't think it's gonna do that.
Drogon says it. Why is this family so messed up?
Yeah. Drogon like is flying, and there's a freeze frame. It's like, you're probably wondering how we got here.
Record scratch.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Drogon's first day at high school. You thought I was young. No.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
This is gonna be our pitch when they let us in the room.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of this being removed, I think, will make people safe to start wherever they want. Some prequels do require you to do that. Some prequels, I ask people with Star Wars, I'm like, well, would you rather see the Greek tragedy, or would you rather see with still redemption at the end, of course, but do you want the tumultuous ride, or do you want the Campbellian sort of monomyth that makes you feel good? And then later, if you like that, you can go to the prequel trilogy. So it's going to depend on the person. I would love to revisit this after seeing the pilot. Like, we should make a note and say, again, not that I'm predicting some tie-in, but I do think that, is there going to be when they do that Stark Baratheon scene, is there going to be something in that scene that I feel would be enhanced by Game of Thrones knowledge? I don't know. But as of right now, I think that this is a safe enough premise to not necessarily need, in the same way that Blood Moon would have been. This is not Robert's Rebellion, where if that show was being made, I would say, you need to watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I was going to say I was going to use that standalone word. I don't think that's necessarily accurate, but it has that kind of vibe. And
Yeah.
I look. Here's the thing: to someone who has that question, it's not going to hurt you to watch Game of Thrones first. But from our vantage point, at least you're right. Let's revisit this after the pilot. Let's revisit this during season one as we start to figure out. But yeah, I think you'll get a sense of the world pretty fast, and I wouldn't say you need to watch anything before. Which is part of the fun. And then as far as reading Fire and Blood overall, I don't think you can truly appreciate the book until you have a wealth of Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire knowledge for my money, because it is this history book that just kind of moves through a lot of the things that you've heard about and other forms of the story. And then I would almost want to say, hey, don't read that book, and particularly that chapter or the chapters on the Dance of the Dragons, and then carry that into the show. Just let the show wash over you. Just let the show hit you where it needs to hit you.
There has to be a healthy amount of acceptance of adaptation. Same with comic book fans or people that liked Harry Potter or people that like Lord of the Rings. I mean, that's going to be a big thing in Rings of Power. I'm sure that when you start covering that show, or when the discourse starts around that show, it's going to be a lot of, well, why did you condense this? And it's like, well, legally we had to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that's why I almost don't want to have a full on discussion about that today. We are gonna, for those who are have missed that before, I am gonna cover Rings of Power here, and folks like Alden are gonna be along for that ride. But man, yeah, there's so much with just where do they get the rights? What estate? What company? Where can they go? What can they mention? That it's confusing. We might be doing some videos or episodes around here to kind of walk through those waters. And I don't want any of that to take away from the joy. I've already seen, even today at the time of the recording, that the way like elves and some of that world is going to be explored is going to be different than maybe ways you're familiar with in the Lord of the Rings world so far to this point. So that's going to be an interesting discussion. That might be just take this one as it lays on the course there, versus knowing too much. So we'll see. We'll see. But that's a great question. Great thoughts. Alden, we're going to wrap up. But as always, so good to have you around these parts. Let's do it again. If you guys have questions, want you to all get them in there. Like I said, use the hashtag Casterly Talk on Twitter. If you follow me at Ken Napzok, give Alden a follow as well. Let him hit you with all of his socials here in a second. And then we're on Facebook as well. If you listen to the podcast, you can listen to it anywhere, but pop over to the Anchor app and leave a voice message there if you want to. You can favor the show over there, but continue to listen to the podcast wherever you want to listen to the podcast. And don't forget, we have the YouTube channel. Just subscribe, even if you don't watch over on YouTube and you're a podcast listener. But if you're here, thumbs up and a good comment, all those kind of things that make the YouTube channels work well. We'd be really appreciative if you do that here as well. Alden, we got some big things coming up for us. Star Wars Celebration. You got some things you're going on there. Tell them about all the things you're doing, where they can find you, and where they can see you if they're going to be at Star Wars Celebration.
100%. It's an exciting and busy time. So always, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at that Alden Diaz, ThatAldenDiaz. That's talking about everything: Star Wars, Game of Thrones, pro wrestling, Dua Lipa. I contain multitudes. And you can find Octa Radio everywhere you get your podcast. That's AHCHTO Radio. That's my show, the main show, interviewing Star Wars personalities, people from around the space. Ken has been on a bunch of times. We just had Shelby Young on, the voice of Princess Leia in Lego and Forces of Destiny. She was on the show. We have our Rebels rewatch going on right now as its own sister spinoff project on the feed. And then Star Wars Celebration. I will be many places, never sleeping, but Saturday morning. If you don't get into Dave and John's panel, we were scheduled for the same time as Dave and John's panel, but it's going to be a great time with my friends at Triad of the Force, and we're going to be doing an episode, a live discussion panel, all about the Latinx representation in Star Wars. So Din Djarin, Bail Organa, Poe Dameron. I mean, it goes on and on with the great characters, the Martez sisters. I mean, you all can name them. We're going to be there talking about those characters, what the future is, what things have been like. And so you can hang out there, meet there. I'll be around that Saturday night. I'll be at the Mosh Isley party, talking about how My Chemical Romance is back with a new song. And yeah, there you go.
Lot of fun. Look for all of them there. Yeah, if you're a Star Wars fan, you're at Star Wars Celebration. Joseph Scrimshaw and I, working under the Force Center banner, will be on Alex and Molly Damon's Star Wars Explained podcast live on the podcast stage Thursday, 2 p.m. Head on out. A lot of people asking if they're going to record it. We won't be recording it. I think Alex and Molly will, to be released on their channel. We are just guests. Going to be a lot of fun. For those who are fans of Jennifer Landis, she'll be there as well doing something else, so won't be able to do Force Center things, but we might all be around. You never know. So that is it for now. A lot of fun. We're getting there. We're still far out, but we're still real close to House of the Dragon. It's been a lot of fun getting ready with that. We'll see you next time here on Casterly Talk.